Good day, traders. Welcome to this week's RMDTRADER Weekly Market Fix, where we highlight 5 potential setups for the week. This week, we will look at both a bullish and bearish scenario in Bitcoin, and also we will revisit the head and shoulders pattern we identified on the US indices. To kick off this week, let's have a look at the NASDAQ. Last week, we saw price action heading right into the yearly pivot, and also where we had a convergence level of both the daily 100 as well as the daily 200 SMAs. Price action from there then saw some rejection, with price currently heading back lower, possibly heading to test the monthly pivot at 14,370. Of course, the head and shoulders pattern has not yet been validated because we have not yet taken out the high of that left shoulder. So while this is in play, we still have the possibility of this head and shoulders to play out with some bearish targets below the monthly pivot at 13,750, also possible still for this week. If we look on the US30, we see a very similar picture, with price heading into that daily 100 and daily 200 SMAs, and then with price action then rejecting that those levels. And of course, as I've previously mentioned, we are then looking for a move lower back towards major support. Moving on to Bitcoin, and in Bitcoin, I'd like to discuss two possible scenarios. And what I'd like you to look at is the fact that we had this breakout from this symmetrical triangle, and then of course we had this retest of this area. So that initial rejection happened on both the upper diagonal resistance channel as well as that yearly 365 daily moving average. And of course, we can see we just kissed the daily 200 SMA before heading for that retest. At this stage, it appears that the obvious move would be continuation of this breakout. And of course, measuring the target area of this consolidation, we get a bullish target of about 54,650, which is coincidentally where we also have our monthly R2 pivot. Of course, I don't think it will be as simple as that, as we still have some very strong overhead resistance, not only from the yearly pivot at 50,500, but also those imbalance areas. The first one, of course, right at that level of 49,000. And of course, another one at 51,500. So there's a good chance that closing either one of those imbalance areas will see big sellers stepping in and driving price back down. And as we head down in that scenario, of course, we have identified 3 bearish targets. The first one, obviously the most important one at this stage, is the monthly pivot, which is currently remaining untested at 43,600. Then we have this area where we have the daily 100 and daily 50 SMAs converging at 41,600. And of course, there will be some additional support from the monthly S1 at 38,900. Moving on now, let's have a look at some of our Forex. And I'd like to look at the USDCHF. This is also one that we had a look at yesterday. So despite the fact that we headed back into this consolidation area, I do remain bullish as I think we are seeing some possible bullish price action from this convergence level of all these moving averages, the 50, the 100, and the 200. Also, we are still in a bullish trend overall, and for that reason, I'm still expecting price to make its way higher. So especially if we get that close above the weekly and monthly pivots, which is right at the same level at that's at 0.928. So if we get a close or a move above that, I suspect we will start seeing price making its way up towards that initial target area of the yearly R1, which is sitting at 0.946. I'd also like to look at the USDCAD. So for the USDCAD, I have actually quite a bit of an extended scenario going on, with price eventually making its way back up towards this area here at 1.274. But I suspect that might still take a few months at least, or weeks at least, months perhaps, to play out. For now, while we are trading below the yearly pivot at 1.254, The higher probability will be a continuation to the downside with the initial target, the weekly S2, at about 1.234. From there, we might see a slight correction or a bounce before heading back towards this target area that I have initially at 1.220, and then also at the yearly S1 pivot at 1.210. Finally, I'd like to look at the USDZAR, and the last week we pointed out the fact that we have tested the 10-year diagonal support, and previously we can see that this level has held on its last test, but the first time we actually had a test of this major diagonal support level, we actually broke below it for quite a bit before heading back up. So I would not rule out the scenario where we see price heading back down and breaking that diagonal support area with the monthly S1 at 14.158. Now, of course, the area that I've identified as very strong support, that will also coincide with a 75% Fibonacci retracement, which is rather extreme, but should it happen, that would offer a good risk-reward opportunity for traders to get long. In terms of bullish targets, we have the monthly pivot still untested at 14.87. So at that stage, we will see whether we get the move and the continued momentum to the upside, or whether we see a rejection back down to test that 10-year diagonal. That concludes this week's video. Hope everyone has a great trading week, and we will see each other again next week. Remember, trade smart and trade successful.